Regardless of anyone's reasons for trying to understand this particular topic, there is no denying that we face an issue in today's world with men not stepping up and being men. But what does that even mean? For nearly 2 decades, I have sought a formula for manhood. Many of us men often dance around some of the key qualities associated with manhood, but in today's complicated world, it is hard to tell what is true and what isn't. I believe that I found a pretty good list of qualities that make a great man, but you as the viewer will inevitably decide for yourself whether to believe it or not. My goal here is not to share my personal opinions based on anecdotal experience or my gut feelings, but instead I want to discuss what God says about being a man in His economy because, in my view, His way is the best way. What's up guys, I'm Chandler, you're watching Gentleman's Flair, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to be a man in God's economy. Before we dive into the nuts and bolts here, we need to go back to the beginning. In the first book of the Old Testament of the Bible, Genesis, God creates the world as well as the first man, who we know as Adam. When God created Adam, his great hope was to partner with him to rule over the good world that God had made. But God looked down onto Adam and quickly realized that the first man was lonely. Recognizing that it was not good for man to be alone, God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, took one of his ribs and used it to create a helper suitable for him. Thus Eve, the first woman, was created, and God presented her to Adam to be his wife. Now, before God gave Adam a wife, He gave him a job, and that was to work and to keep the Garden of Eden. Those responsibilities inevitably extended to Adam's wife. That is, he was charged to cultivate and to guard her. But a great deceiver in the form of a crafty serpent infiltrates the garden and home of the man and woman and begins to chip away at Eve's trust in God. Adam is nowhere to be found, and suddenly Eve is doing the one thing that God commanded them not to do, and that was that they were not to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The glaring issue here is that Adam is not by his wife's side, so he cannot intervene or chase the serpent away. Instead, when Eve brings the fruit to Adam and offers it to him, he eats it without hesitation. What follows is a tragic series of events in which sin enters into the world because of the disobedience displayed by both Adam and Eve. But the details here are definitely worth examining because they lay the groundwork for the honest, real, and genuine art of biblical manhood. Fast forward to the present day, and it becomes clear to see that more and more men are lost now than ever before. Our society has gradually tried to emasculate men and has blamed many of the world's problems throughout human history on masculinity. We've all heard it before. Toxic masculinity is the root of so many issues. The term is thrown around so liberally nowadays that it is routinely conflated with masculinity altogether. But the truth is that toxic masculinity is not the problem in and of itself, but rather a consequence of the real issue that many harmful and overbearing men encounter today, which I'll get to here shortly. You'll quickly see that after a brief internet search, toxic masculinity starts to sound like an umbrella term that can be used against men depending on their worldviews. And like many things in life, some of it is true and some of it is not. The topic of toxic masculinity requires careful contextualization, and unfortunately there are so-called medical professionals who will tell you that toxic masculinity was born from traditional masculinity, which supposedly up until around the 1980s became incompatible with contemporary societies. Stating as much has caused these alleged experts to redefine what masculinity and being a man are altogether. Now, I'm not attempting to ignore the atrocities of countless powerful men throughout our world's history, not one bit. But their problems were not the old masculinity that has seemingly been replaced with the new. Instead, I believe that their stories serve as cautionary tales of what happens to men when the issues that plague each of us are allowed to persist. In other words, the issues of overbearing, domineering, and destructive virility displayed by men throughout history are linked to the same problems men face today that can also lead to toxic behaviors, and that is that it is not an issue of masculinity in men, but rather an issue of the hearts of men. Here's a hot take for you, and stick with me here. True masculinity is not the problem in our world. It is the solution. But then this raises the question, what is a true man supposed to look like, act like, be like? You see, there's the rub. Many people believe there's no such thing as objective truth, so a man can be whatever we say he is. Same goes for a woman. Call me old-fashioned, but I believe that there is a capital T truth that helps maintain our order in life, and that this objective truth is very closely tied to reality. I'll take it a step further and say that the Holy Bible is not only the source of objective truth, but also the complete story of mankind's rise, fall, and redemption. Believe it or not, there is a way to be a real man, and it isn't about dressing well, having advanced degrees, maintaining a high social status, being strong or athletic, being devilishly handsome, making tons of money, proving things to people, or having numerous women. Being a real man is about so much more than all of that. But before we continue discussing this really challenging topic, I would like to explain why having this conversation is more critical now than ever before. The truth is that many men these days are just lost. You know, everyone hurts now and again, but the men who themselves hurt wind up hurting others and spreading that pain onward, often to the next generation, whether it's their own children or people in their communities. Again, many men are lost, hurting, lacking confidence, in need of someone to follow, and desperate for wisdom and compassion. When we men are directionless, we will follow nearly anyone who can communicate some semblance of a vision to us. It is no surprise then that many men these days turn to the internet's various online communities or the nearest self-improvement book, looking for someone to teach them how to be a man, and a successful, good-looking one at that. To be a man in God's economy is so much more than quiet confidence, personal growth, or basic self-awareness. As we will soon see, biblical manhood emphasizes developing good character, making sacrifices, investing in relationships, leading effectively in the home and in communities, and boldly loving others, just as Jesus did. To be a man is to endeavor to provide well, lead effectively, mentor wisely, defend and protect diligently, and to be the generous friend that so many others need. A man who succeeds by doing all of these things will grow to be a peaceful presence in people's lives. As Saint Seraphim of Sarov said nearly 300 years ago, acquire inner peace, and 1,000 souls around you will be saved. For us men, it is indeed true. Many of the world's problems exist because men have spiraled out of control, allowing their hearts to harden beyond measure. Instead of becoming purveyors of peace, they become harbingers of chaos. Fatherlessness and a lack of genuine leadership among men fuel many of our most pressing social issues, the consequences of which are of the furthest reaching variety. What now follows are 4 distinct attributes that real men share, as well as what God's Word says a man should strive to become. If we all embodied these principles, not only would we become the best men that we can be, but we would have a fighting chance at resolving nearly all of society's current issues. So, first things first, a man is a leader. Being a man means being a leader, and any man who thinks he is not a leader or claims that he doesn't want to be one is just a bad leader. As men, we don't get to choose to be leaders because that role is bestowed upon us by our Creator, whose image we bear. We're either good leaders or bad ones. We're born into this role and encouraged to further develop into it. Men ultimately fail in life because they either refuse to accept their role as a leader, or they embrace and idolize it to the point where they become tyrannical. This is the impetus for why so many of our social issues are so widespread. And that's because achieving balance is difficult. No, not every man is born to lead a country, army, business, or even an organized team per se. But the day that God breathed life into the first man's lungs was when he gave him a solemn commission, one that extends to every man who has walked this earth ever since, and that is to work and to keep his garden. I'm referring now to leadership in the home and within communities. In the case of fathers and father figures, men are made in the home, and it takes a man to raise a man. As a man, to fail in the home or within the community is to fail everywhere, period. As you hear this, you might think of the many incredible women who raised their sons as single parents, and make no mistake, that is a monumental achievement that so many single mothers or female parental figures ought to be applauded for. But look closely at the men with these backgrounds who became exceptional leaders and broke the cycle of fatherlessness in their homes and communities, and you will soon see that it was because they had a strong male father figure in their lives, perhaps even multiple figures over time, to help guide them. This isn't to say that mothers and women can't help lead and raise boys to become men. Far from it. The roles they fulfill are undeniably important, but men and women are equal in worth and different in function. So I'll say it again. It takes a man to raise a man, either as a father in the home or a father figure in the community. I've seen so many men who never married and never had children of their own, yet they chose to guide and mentor young boys and even young girls when in their communities fulfilling their God-given calling to do so. As the saying goes, so go the men, so go the church. You can definitely add homes and the greater community to that list as well. Not every man is meant to be a biological father, but every man is called to be a paternal figure to someone. When there is a job to do, a man steps in and he does it, and he ought to lead with love and truth every step of the way. A man does not lead by sitting on top of his throne and demanding things from those closest to him. Instead, a man leads effectively by keeping a vigilant watch in his own life and the lives of others, making sure that people under his care are able to grow and prosper. A man recognizes the need to take charge and finds the strength within himself never to abdicate his God-given responsibility. Many issues today are caused by men who become abdicators. Most men believe that their sole role in the home is just to provide, to earn a paycheck and give their children and spouse a comfortable life. Most men leave it there, but it's never enough. I'm here to tell you that while this is the fundamental function of a man, more, much more, is required of him. To be a provider in the home means that a man must also provide for the emotional, spiritual, and psychological well-being of his spouse and children. If something is wrong, he must take the initiative and formulate solutions. The same can be said for an unmarried man with no children who is contributing as a member of his community. The man who provides monetarily to his children but remains absent at ball games or during family meals is a man who misses the critical opportunities to instruct, lead, and be intimate with his family. Why do men become like this then? Well, because the same thing happened to them when they were growing up. They had absent fathers or father figures in their lives and very few people willing to step up and light the way for them. Real men try to break the cycle of pain and learn to seek and accept the undeniable truth, and that is, once more, that to fail in the home or in the community is to fail everywhere as a man. A man is a warrior. Whenever I talk to other men, especially Christian men, about the need to be a warrior in their homes and communities, I usually get a lukewarm or hesitant response. So I believe it's important to clarify what I mean here. Men fight for what is right. Men fight for the ones they love. Men fight for the truth. And every man has a warrior spirit blazed in his heart. A true man understands that our world is both amazing and terrible. When something goes bump in the night, what will you do? Are you prepared to defend your family or neighbors from potential threats? I've met many men who tell me that they have never had an issue before and don't see the point in knowing how to handle a weapon or receive specialized training for hand-to-hand combat. In many cases, depending on where someone lives, you probably won't face many issues. But learning to handle yourself isn't just about you and your current situation. It's also about gaining knowledge and skills to pass down to your family for generations, so that a strong culture of readiness with an emphasis on a protector mindset is maintained and promoted. Just because you don't need to know how to handle yourself or what to do in escalatory situations does not mean that your son or daughter or the people under your care and leadership won't have to deal with people who seek to hurt them someday. We have to think big and think long term. This means everyone must stay prepared. We need strong men who lead well and leverage their warrior spirit in constructive and honorable ways, never using their God-given strength or abilities for abuse or turmoil. Outside of the military and law enforcement, many people associate aggression with activities like combat sports or marksmanship training. I'm not about to sit here and say that men and women who enjoy these activities are all saints, but I will never subscribe to the notion that possessing and practicing these kinds of skills makes someone more aggressive and therefore bad. It's simply not true, and frankly, every man should know how to handle himself, both with a weapon and with his bare hands. But he should do so wisely and deliberately. Preying upon the weak and defenseless is not the mark of a true warrior. It is instead the mark of a coward. Sad excuses for men are those whose warrior spirit is so poorly calibrated that it has enabled them to engage in vile and abusive behaviors. Children lash out and struggle to keep their hands to themselves when they don't get their way. But men remain steadfast and are judicious with how they administer their hands. In my experience, no other example is better than the grappling martial art known as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a little while now, and it has taught me how to think quickly, react faster, close the distance between myself and an attacker, leverage my body as well as theirs to take them down and subdue them, all while staying completely in control of both myself and them without throwing a single punch. Sound scary? Well, it should be. Those skills are important, but they should be used wisely. Just like any firearm, pocket knife, or kitchen scissors, anything can be used as a weapon. But the true power and even relevance lies in the mind and in the heart of the person wielding it, not in the weapon itself. Being a true man means knowing when to fight, whether through words or deeds, as he steps into action to deliver swift justice for the defenseless, never for personal gain or a twisted sense of power, and always in line with God's vision for what is righteous. I think that this goes without saying, but it is worth emphasizing that a man cannot be harmless, or in other words, he shouldn't be incapable of violence. Knowing how to be violent and actively choosing not to do so is what makes nonviolence a virtue. If you are incapable of being violent, then you're just harmless. And if you're harmless, then you're just weak. And that is of no benefit to anyone, because weak men make hard times. But with all that, real men know how to be gentle, and gentleness is strength under control, which is worlds away from being harmless. I know that some of you hearing this might describe yourselves as pacifists and believe that complete and total nonviolence is the best way, and I absolutely agree with you. But sadly, that's just not the world that we live in. Of course, don't murder in cold blood and with hate stitched in your heart, but also never stand by as someone is being attacked by any evildoer. As men, we must act or die trying. The warrior in a man knows when to fight and when to sheath his sword. A little bit of mercy can go a long way these days, and the mark of a true warrior in a man is knowing when to put down his fists and show tenderness. Here's a quick story about a man that my wife and I love to listen to. His name is Erwin McManus, and he's a prolific pastor, author, and speaker who shares a heartfelt story about sending his son Aaron off to summer camp years ago. Here's how Erwin tells the story. Aaron was just a little guy, and I was glad that he was attending a church camp. I figured he wasn't going to hear all those ghost stories, because ghost stories can really cause a kid to have nightmares. But unfortunately, since it was a Christian camp and they didn't tell ghost stories because we don't believe in ghosts, they told demon and Satan stories instead. And so when Aaron got home, he was terrified. That first night home, Aaron asked me to stay in the room with him. "Daddy, I'm afraid," he said. They told all these stories about demons. And although I wanted to tell him that they're not real, I knew that I couldn't bring myself to say that. Aaron pleaded, Daddy, would you pray for me that I would be safe?" In that plea, I knew that he had a desire for a kind of warm blanket Christianity that too many people assume is all there is to it. So I said to my son, "Aaron, I will not pray for you to be safe. I will instead pray that God will make you dangerous, so dangerous that demons will flee when you enter the room." And Aaron said, "All right, but pray that I would be really, really dangerous, Daddy." The warrior within a man understands the need to be a bold follower of Jesus. When the warrior prays, it is not for safety, but for courage in a world that is increasingly unsafe. I believe that God is more likely to answer the prayers we pray for courage when we face danger than the ones we pray as we run away from it. Not foolish danger, but the kind of boldness that isn't afraid to embrace everything that God has for us. So as a tender warrior, don't necessarily pray for safety, because it's not often a prayer that I think God is likely to answer. But pray instead to be more dangerous than your enemy. In the answer to that prayer, we can find the solution to our deep longing for a life that truly matters. A man is a mentor. Men use the same muscles and mechanics to teach, coach, and mentor others in their communities, the workplace, or at home, just as they often fulfill the roles of father figures. I learned this well during my last deployment. The youngest junior officer on board my ship worked tirelessly to achieve his qualifications to become a surface warfare officer and earn his warfare pin. A large part of this was gaining the trust and confidence of the captain so that she would trust him to pilot and navigate the ship on his own. Over the course of those 6 months on patrol, that young man clung to me in unforgettable ways, reminding me of how essential it is for men to be good teachers. To be a man means having the heart of a teacher and adding value to people. A good teacher understands the difference between sending people up and bringing them up in the world. To send someone up in any instruction means to give vague directions and unclear language while trying to guide their actions. But to bring someone up in any instruction means to lead by example, which is exactly what a man should do as a mentor to others. We must be kind, willing, and patient in taking others by the hand and embarking on a leadership journey with them. A pretender of a man makes weak excuses like, "I suffered, so you have to," or worse, they might even claim that they don't care or shouldn't care because they've already arrived in life for themselves. This is no behavior for a genuine man. It is the behavior of a lazy charlatan. Faithful men take teaching seriously. They see the big picture. Success and progress are better maintained when men take the necessary actions to develop and mentor those who will eventually replace them one day. As men, we are created with the capacity to teach, enabling us to become good fathers or good father figures. Again, I understand that not every man is called to become a father eventually, and I definitely won't compel any of you to want to do that. But know that real men are teachers at heart. We will eventually find ourselves in a position to influence someone. Just as a man can raise children, he can also mentor those under him in specific skills or areas of life. Pastor and former Green Beret Stu Weber puts it best. The mentor in a man teaches life, sometimes in a spiritual, mechanical, technical, recreational, or intellectual capacity. Mentorship from a man is consistently personal and familial, and it is always transformational. A man is a friend. What we make most in this world is connection. Forming strong bonds with others is part of what it means to be both a human being and a man operating in the arena of life. If there is to be one of these 4 attributes that I've shared today that ought to be the most important, then it is this one. A man is a friend, first and foremost. If the leader, warrior, and mentor in a man are solely focused on providing, protecting, and teaching without connection, then it is no good. I know that I keep beating this drum, but again, many young men have become troubled and lost, causing pain and struggling to form meaningful connections with others. Why? Because they lacked a friend who could provide for their physical, emotional, spiritual, and psychological needs. They lacked a friend to protect them when it mattered the most. They lacked a friend to teach them, often between right and wrong, so that the cycle of pain could one day cease. The friend in a man connects with his son when he struggles to get in touch with his manhood, just as he connects with his daughter as she navigates the turbulent world of adolescence. The friend in a man is there to listen and provide direction with a tender heart to anyone who needs it. The friend in a man is there to spring into action when injustice occurs. With the heart of a lion, he is quick to defend his friends and family when action is needed, and when calm is required. The man knows when to lower his fists and show mercy when it is necessary. The friend in a man is there to guide the young mariner as he learns to navigate the ship and earn the trust of the captain. While every other would-be teacher is standing silent, reluctant to provide encouragement and praise when necessary, the man who connects with his pupil and demonstrates the heart of a teacher is a friend in the moments that count the most for the team and in life. Many strong men come to mind when thinking about the numerous books of the Bible. Moses, the great shepherd of a downtrodden people who were once enslaved, and leading them out of Egypt on a trek towards something greater. Joshua, the next leader after Moses and a great military leader who was chosen to finally lead his people into the land that God had promised. And of course, the great King David, the warrior poet who was literally described as the man after God's own heart, who conquered the tyrant Goliath as a young boy and led a nation of people through trial after trial. All of these men were great leaders and admirable individuals in their own right, but they were also flawed and capable of truly terrible and shameful acts. As impressive as they are to learn from and follow, there is only one man in all of human history who is perfect, blameless, pious, and without sin. Jesus Christ was the manliest man to have ever lived, and he still is, a new and better Adam, one that we can all learn from. He was not just a man after God's own heart, but God in the flesh, which makes him worthy of following and deserving of all the glory on earth and in heaven. So worthy, in fact, that powerful angels from above cannot help but bow and marvel in his presence. Being a man means recognizing that God has given us great power and purpose to do good in his world, connecting with others, providing for them, protecting them, and teaching them well. To be a man is to allow others to flourish and thrive, but only by following Jesus Christ as our ultimate model for living well and faithfully to the King and Creator of all. It's time to break the cycle, men, and reconnect with our inner leader, warrior, mentor, and friend. Let's become the men God fashioned us to be and work hard to fulfill our duty until the day our lives, like dust, return to the earth as it was, and our spirits return to God who gave them to us. Now, that's a good story, isn't it? Let's write it together after we write the words of Jesus on our hearts.